Hi everyone, this is Evo. We'll be starting the workshop in just a minute. Hi everyone, this is Evo. We'll be getting started in just a minute with Promptcraft 1. This is the first in the Reality Craft series on getting started in generative art and media. Starting now. Thank you for joining us today as we are getting started here at the Reality Craft Design Lab. It's good to see you. I will give you some time to see me as we turn down the music. And thank you for joining us here as we are getting started with the first in the ongoing series of workshops. Hi, everyone. This is Evo Haining. I'm going to make myself small because we are going to have slides today, and I will be disappearing shortly. But it is good to see you. And hi, everyone. I'm coming to you from the Reality Craft Design Lab in Oakland, Emeryville, East Bay, California. And this is the first in the Promptcraft series. We are going to be discussing today an introduction to prompt engineering, and we're going to explore what Promptcraft as a practice is for a wide variety of creatives who are coming into this for the first time. And thank you for joining us. I can see that quite a few of you are now live. We do have some capacities to leave comments and chat in some of our areas here. So you may be able to leave a message for me that we can bring into the show. Please let me know if you are having a challenge with the audio, as we are going to have those little blips. That's Discord, which we're going to use for the part of this workshop. And I'm going to be taking you through basically a 90-minute workshop today, including some interactive portions. And we are going to be exploring Promptcraft and specifically an introduction to what is prompt engineering and how to write a prompt for generative media. So welcome and thank you for joining us. I can see that we do have comments coming and sound is good. Thank you for letting me know. Thank you for joining us from all over the world. So we have folks coming today from 3 continents, 5 countries that I personally know of. And this is a very quick example of what we're going to be discussing. These slides will be made available in our Reality Craft group and certainly can be sent at the end as well. They are in Google Slides. So we're going to be discussing what is Promptcraft, how to form and frame a prompt for different types of generative tools. We're going to get started with Midjourney, but we're also going to be looking at Stable Diffusion today as well. We're going to talk a little bit about styles, lighting types, sort of keywords and tips and tools, resources, weights and measures, other parameters that change how you get something out. We're going to discuss image prompting and how to prompt from an image. We are going to be exploring use of Stable Diffusion. We might get to ChatGPT today, although to be honest, it has not been up and working for many of us, so it may not happen today. We'll just discuss it more than exactly have a chance to get in there today. But we'll wrap up with some tools and some time to be interactive together. So, and some of you, I think, are welcome. We're going to have some time where you'll be able to come in and share your screen, maybe ask a question. So this is a little bit of the praxis I live by, and I've been a world builder, interactive media creator now for 25 years. And so thinking about how our words and how those words create worlds, right? That's what we're here to do today. We are world building through words. Our actions and our decisions the culture we create then have ripple effects, and they shape the ways we thrive together. So we're here to do very conscious world building in the process of Promptcraft. And I just want to be really honest with you about some of the inquiry that might go along with that. So reality craft, and I apologize, but I'm fighting just a little bit of a cold today, so you may hear me be a little snifflier than usual, but hopefully that is not too challenging for us today. Reality craft is a number of different processes that we are wrapping into both physical products and into this interactive workshop series. Now, reality craft in summary is a world building process. It is a game. We have a physical design lab here in Oakland, California, and a gallery that includes space for generative creativity. So far, that has included workshops, both live and physical, as well as virtual, and salons, where we are combining physical artistry, and that can be 2D, 3D, video, you name it, with these new tools for world building. And so that takes many, many different forms. Here today, we're here to discuss Promptcraft, which is a process to realize and design your generative creative works. Now, that might include words, that might include images, or that might include numbers, or some mix of all three. And we're going to talk a little bit about the language and the grammar of Promptcraft. So to start, and I apologize, but I'm going to have to be a little bit judicious with tissue use while we talk today. Apologies. A prompt is a series of words, numbers, and other characters that express an idea that can be generated. Prompts can include a series or a mix of characters that speak to most, if not all, of these elements. The content type. The content type might be poster, illustration, photograph. In this case, since we're using art terms today, we're going to be primarily exploring art. So these are the kinds of content types that you might start with. A description, which can be a small cluster of words that describes the scene you are imagining. A style, which could be something like impressionism or surrealism. It could be something like a graphic design style as well. Composition, which could include theatrical terms. If you have ever worked in theater or cinema or in photography, you have many composition words at your disposal that you can apply here. And then parameters. And parameters are things that are useful specifically to these algorithms in order to create various weights and measures or exclusions as well. So it's going to refine what you get out. So we're going to explore today Stable Diffusion and Midjourney, and we're going to compare them just a little bit. This workshop is not primarily a comparative analysis, but we are going to have some time to do that, depending on how far along you are in using these tools. Midjourney, if you choose to use Midjourney today, is primarily accessed through Discord. Now, if you do not have Discord and you want to sign up for it, we can walk through that very quickly. Otherwise, Stable Diffusion, which you see on the left here, this was the exact same prompt in those two tools related to an Art Nouveau concept. So we're going to discuss a little bit of how to get started in both of these tools if you have not gotten your hands wet yet. So if you're a Discord user, you can go to midjourney.com and sign up for a free account and get started. It's usually just a few minutes to get there. You basically just need to join the Discord server. Now, once you do this, that gives you access to the public space. And what many of us do in order to bypass some of the noise of the public space is to just DM directly with a Discord bot of Midjourney. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like as a process today. If you are not a Discord user and you want to try a different workflow, your other options include diffusion.land, which is a website specifically that's going to give you some comparative analysis on different models. So you can include the same basic phrase in a prompt to both Midjourney and Stable Diffusion via website. So these are free and relatively open source tools, but they are only going to give you a certain number of generations. Now, some of them limit you at 10, 15, or 25, most of them have a hard limit of somewhere around 20 to 25 images. So I want to give you that constraint ahead of time. Another one you may want to try is beta.dreamstudio.ai, and this is for using Stable Diffusion on the web. So these are some basic tools. We're going to look at some of these today together. And I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that you are still hearing me and all is well. So getting started in Midjourney. Now, if you have not done this, let me know. If you need me to kind of slow down a little bit, we're going to screen share from Midjourney in just a moment, and I'm going to be bringing in that screen. But the basis of setting up a prompt starts with the trigger, basically. You are basically needing to tell Midjourney, and in this case, the Midjourney bot is what's listening for these commands. The command you are trying to give it is imagine. So to do that in Discord, you're using a / and imagine. And I'm going to show you what this looks like. Let me go ahead and bring in my Discord window. Now, this takes just a moment for me, and I apologize ahead of time, but what I like to do, and I apologize for that as well. We have a handful of ways in which we make this a little bit easier, but what I'm going to do today is basically walk you through via the web version of Discord. What you are seeing right now is my conversation with the Midjourney bot. So I am in a DM, a direct message in Discord with the Midjourney bot. This is just a one-on-one conversation. It is in some ways more private than what I would be able to do if I did not have that. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll for you, and I might be able to make the text a little bigger for you as well, because in the past, I think that has helped us a little bit to see what we're doing here. All right. So when I form a prompt, I am typing it into the bottom of this message window right here. And I am typing / imagine. And imagine is usually going to bring up imagine prompt. And that is exactly the command it is looking for. Imagine prompt with a colon. That is how it forms the prompt in Midjourney. That is specific to Midjourney. So in this case, I was seeking a poster of a solar punk future with eclipse in background, vibrant movement from dark to light. And I might give it some constraints at the end, or as we discuss, parameters as well. Now, those parameters can look like lots of different things. So I might say something like no people. Like, let's say I definitely don't want people in this. I've been doing this prompt. This is a sample prompt I'm doing as a concept for a colleague who has a festival in the solar punk scene. So we've been exploring how to use this for concept of poster design, right? Not necessarily the final poster design, but the ideas, the compositions that might work for the festival. And so from these kinds of prompts, as you see, as it's scanning there, I'm hoping that you're seeing that happen in real time. Poster of a solar punk future with eclipse. And now we see 4 versions, and then U1, U2, U3, U4, V1, V2, V3, and V4. And we're going to discuss what those are. So those 4 U's are for upscale. And as I look at my images, I'm going to scroll back up just a little bit because I did make them bigger. Oop, a little too far there. So you can see some of the ones I've gotten previously as well. So I have these 4 images. Now I can say, wow, I'm really compelled by maybe 2 and 3. Maybe I want to see 3 large, and I might want to see some versions of number 2. So to see number 3 larger or to upscale it, I'm going to click U3. Now, in this case, U1 is the top left, U2 is the top right, bottom left is U3. So I have clicked U3 and it's going to upscale it. Now, let's say I also liked the second one, which is the top right, but I want to see some versions of it. I don't want to see that one, but I might want to see 4 new versions. And that's where I'm going to click V2. Now, in this case, I can remix as well. I can add to the prompt. That is a setting that I turn on in order to do that. So that's a basic prompt. That is the process you go through. And we're going to talk a little bit about each piece of that. But I'm going to go ahead and I'll put our slides back on because I want to talk you through a little bit of what that is. Okay, so every time we do Imagine Prompt in Midjourney, it gives us back a grid of 4 images. Now, if you're using Stable Diffusion, you can set the number of images. You might want more or less. They might cost more or less, depending on how you are doing your computing. But in Midjourney, it is a stable 4 each time. Now, when I am forming that prompt, as I mentioned, there are those 5 pieces, but I'm often putting it together in text. That centerpiece is the text of the prompt. And then one of our colleagues in the workshop was asking about the words at the end. What was Q2, V4? Those are parameters. And we're going to talk through parameters as well. So the text of the prompt, what I asked you to write and to think about, go ahead and start with 3 words up to 5 words that might not feel like they have anything to do with each other, but that speak to a concept you might have in mind. So again, think about 1 word that might be a style word, in this case, surrealist. 1 word that might be a description of what it might be doing, in this case, dripping, right? And sometimes I like to use esoteric or unusual words, or if you're in Midjourney, you can also use emoji, which can be very fascinating because you can create an entire prompt just using emoji. And that can be a fascinating way to do this, even with young people who are new to this and maybe are thinking about different types of concepts and how to do storytelling or different ideas about energy and mood and vibe, because many different types of outcomes are going to come depending on the words you use, or if you use something like an image or an emoji in your prompt. We're going to talk through both of those options because you can use an image to prompt other images. Image prompting is something that is very common in both Midjourney and in Stable Diffusion, but only certain versions will allow you to do it. So go ahead and try this out on your own. Try a few words that maybe don't make a lot of sense to each other, but that might describe a palette, vibrant or prismatic spectrum. You can give a number of words to describe a palette or a colorscape that give you some definition to your picture as well. So also think about the types of words that help describe a scene, the way you would write it out in a screenplay. So these are the kinds of things you can consider. And if you are struggling with how to get your Midjourney bot going, because when you're thrown into Midjourney for the first time, you are in the public channels and it can be very noisy. It's a great place to experiment and learn from other people, but it can be very difficult to keep track of your work. So I have heard that some folks have had trouble doing a direct DM to the Midjourney bot. And this is a relatively new bug over the last few days. If you are struggling with this, a workaround, there have been, as I understand it, two workarounds. Either creating a private room, basically like a private thread where you are just in there with the Midjourney bot and no one else. And you can do that in your own Discord servers. You can bring the Midjourney bot to your Discord server, which is what one of my colleagues has been doing. I hear that that works much, much better. We are currently using the Midjourney bot in at least half a dozen experimental Discord servers. So I just want to let you know that if you're struggling with the DM portion, I think there might be a bug specifically with this week and with that bot. And I don't know when that's going to be fixed by Midjourney, but there are a few workarounds. Unfortunate, but true. So we can explore most of what you can do in these spaces, even if you are in a public Midjourney space. You can do all of these same things. You can prompt for settings. You can prompt for doing an imagine, and you can also manage your prompts. Now, you might, again, look for the quietest room possible in the sense that as you go through the Discord in Midjourney, some of it might be very large, very loud, lots of things flying through. That might be a little bit overwhelming. It's, again, a good place to learn, not a great place to do the work. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and bring back our Midjourney page. So variation. We've talked a little bit. The U is upscaling. The V is variation. There's also a ninth button there, which is basically like a reroll. It's going to just tell you, go ahead and give me another 4 images. So you can hear my Discord notifications are on. So every time I get a new one, like that big upscale, I can know, right? So I can see that picture. I can say, okay, that's pretty good. It's still going to be a relatively small size in the sense that the most you're going to get out of Midjourney, even at an upscale max, is going to be somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 pixels, depending on which aspect ratios you're working in. From there, we often take pictures to a larger upscaling program, which some people pay for. There are free tools that do upscaling as well. But often, if you're thinking about using these images, you need to go through more than one upscaling process, and then you might be digitally painting or taking things in or out or removing things along the way. All right, so let's dive back into Discord. I want to show you a few more things specific to this. So as you can see, this is the poster. I was able to say, oh, that's pretty cool. I like the design there. I apologize. It seems to be flickering a little bit. I'm not sure why, but you can see I also get some buttons at the end of an upscale. That includes make variations, which I think I'm going to do in this case because I do like this idea, but I kind of want to see some versions of it. I can also do these other types of upscales. I'm going to go ahead and do them all so that you can see them. I have also done something called an emoji rating. And what that's going to do is help me find it a little bit later in my own collections. Now, there are a few other really cool things you can do. Now, what you just saw when I did a variation is I have control to do something called remix. And to do this, I'm going to change my settings by doing /settings. And at this point, I just hit return and I can change my settings in Midjourney. And this is something you might want to do. We're going to change some things in order to be able to do things that might not be enabled. Right now, we are using Midjourney version 4. Right now, Midjourney is coming up with new versions every 3 months, roughly. So in the last year, there have been 4 versions along with some test versions, some that are good for photos, some that are good for anime, Niji mode, some that are really designed for doing concept art or for things that look more finished. V4 is the first model I think that has a strong handle on anatomy. For example, relatively realistic looking humans minus, having 9 fingers or something like that. There are other parameters and things here you can change. Regular upscale versus light or beta upscale. These are things you might want to experiment with. I personally find that I'm not getting great results out of light and beta upscale in V4, but that changes depending on what others are experiencing. There is a public and a private mode here. Remix mode, which is something I would ask all of you to turn on, because remix mode allows you to add to your prompt. So I hope that makes sense, but turn on your remix mode where that dice is. Fast mode, I am not turned on for right now because you only get a certain number of fast hours, even if you are paying for Midjourney, and then you go into relax mode. So I am currently in relax mode because I've made so many hundreds of images this month that I am now on slow. And this is how it works is Midjourney, to make unlimited images is somewhere in the range of $30 a month. But if you need to work at production speed, you might need to be paying $50 a month or more. And if you're going to be using these for production, you might want to enter into some sort of an agreement with them as well. Because if you are monetizing your work, there are different types of agreements because Midjourney is a company with commercial. So they are obviously one of many generative art companies out here. We are going to talk about Stable Diffusion shortly and some of the differences in these spaces. But what I'm doing right now is just upscaling again. I'm going through, I'm saying, okay, I look at these 4 images and I'm going to upscale to maybe just to see them large. And sometimes I am upscaling specifically so that I can use a concept later. It doesn't hurt me to go ahead and bank hundreds of images. And so I often will do that in order to realize a concept. So we're going to talk a little bit about parameters and what those elements are at the end of a prompt. And then we're going to go into how to add an image. So parameters are the things that an algorithm specific to Midjourney would be able to read. Now, parameters are going to be dealt with differently in different tools, and you're going to learn some of the it's like learning to play one instrument does not necessarily teach you how to play all instruments. So understanding music and music composition is one piece, but you also have to understand the things that are unique to each instrument. So these are the things that are unique to this instrument, in this case, Midjourney. So we're talking about algorithmic modifiers, and these are used to improve the outputs. There is a whole book on this stuff that Midjourney has put out, and I'm going to put the URL for that for you. It is midjourney.getbook.io. And this is a detailed guide from Midjourney. And like I said, we are today working at Midjourney V4, but you might want to explore. If you're, for example, trying for something more abstract, you might want to use one of the previous versions. Or if you're trying something anime, you might want to try the version specific to anime as well. So midjourney.getbook.io is where you're going to really be able to dig into what these algorithmic modifiers can do and how they can help you. So one thing you might want to try for a few minutes of this workshop is changing your settings to V3. Now, like I said, this is going to affect the anatomic realism of not just humans, but other animals. Cats, for example, were not good in V3 versus V4. I know I can show you a little bit of what we've been able to get over the last few months in terms of improvements. But V3 allows you to do certain things you cannot do in V4 right now, including changes to aspect ratio and also certain types of style parameter changes. So those of you who work in cinema or in any type of other type of media, video deliveries, understand that you're often looking for a very specific type of aspect ratio. Uh, 9:16, 3:2, these are really common aspect ratios. They will work fine in Midjourney V3. They'll also work fine in Stable Diffusion. However, you are not going to necessarily get that to work in V4 right now. That will change quickly. So you may be watching this a few weeks from now, and that will be not the case. So please note that the ratios get normalized. So a ratio 3:2 is the same as AR. In this case, AR means aspect ratio. So I'm doing 2 hyphens, aspect ratio, and then either the ratio or the pixel, right? The pixel count 1920 by 1280, that gives me something that is specific to my type of publication or my type of output. So again, these are things you can do in V3. Eventually you'll be able to do them in V4 as well. So this is another really important note. When you are doing the first generation, that first image you're getting back is pretty small, right? It's 384 pixels. 1536 for the first upscale and 1920 by 1280 for the upscale max. Now, upscale max 1920 by 1280 might be fine for your video or for your presentation if you're doing a presentation here, but it's not necessarily big enough for print. And so that's where, again, you're going to want to engage with a broader tool for upscaling, especially if you're trying to do something in that space. We're going to talk a little bit about a tool that is relatively new to me. But I want you to be able, all right, so we're going to stop sharing one screen and bring in a new one. And this is one that is relatively new to me. It's a tool. Let me actually take you through the beginner's notes first. We're going to go to a tool called Prompter. And Prompter does a number of things here. So Prompter, Shane McGeehan is the maker of this. Now, I donated to him. I would encourage you to do the same. You can do that. His website is prompterguide.com. And we're looking at a guide called Prompter specifically because this can help you organize in what would be a visual notebook of sorts, a way to organize all of this content as you are working on something. Let's say you're using the same phrases over and over again, or you're exploring some of the things that are advanced topics, such as seed control. All of these things are useful. So I'm going to make sure we have, let's pull this all in stream. Okay, so Prompter and the Prompter Guide specifically. Prompter for Midjourney is a tool with an organized database for the terminology. So again, if you're thinking about language and how to organize your language, we're basically going to be looking at a Google Doc version of what you see here. And it can do a number of things. It can organize some of those algorithmic modifiers. It can organize the parameters for you. You don't have to think about the codes. It'll just bring them up for you. The descriptors, you can organize some of your favorite clusters of content. So I am going to go ahead and bring in, let's bring it in that way. All right. Thank you for your patience. So when you go to prompterguide.com/prompter, you will see an opportunity to basically copy this document for yourself. This document is in Google Docs. You can keep track of my prompts, my data, and use the tool itself. So we are in this case, a shared document. Let me make sure that you can see this. Add to stream. All right, there we go. So Prompter for Midjourney. Midjourney, again, this is specific to Midjourney V3 too, because some of those things like aspect ratios or some of the parameters are going to work better there. So I just wanted you to keep that in mind. If you try and take your prompt over to Midjourney V4, it might give you an error message. The reason for that is because some types of parameters are not yet enabled in V4. Midjourney itself is one of those tools that improves very quickly and tends to enable things every few weeks. So again, check back if something isn't working 1 week, it probably will be working a few weeks after that. Let's start by writing out our main idea. Now, we're going to do a poster of a solar punk future with solar eclipse. Now you can see here there's a weight. So I can give this a weight between 0.5 and 5. There are also secondary subjects with image URLs that I can also weight. Weights, or to think of this broadly in the algorithmic terms, weights and measures, are how an algorithm understands how much value to give every piece of your prompt. So when I'm talking to you, I might emphasize something. A weight is an emphasis or a whisper, right? So that's what you're creating, is a way for the algorithm to understand how much emphasis to give. Okay, not necessary, but these are things that you might want to explore, right? So I can change the version of the algorithm. In this case, I might be able to drop down and say V3, V2, V1, the anime model, test P. What this is going to do is it's going to query different versions of Midjourney. Each of these, they're going to be taking at the end of my prompt and putting 2 hyphens and then style for a. Someone was asking what V4 meant. It just meant that it was querying the V4 algorithm. It is coming up with a different query to V3 than it is to V4. And that is specific to the tool. Each one is going to have its own sort of interesting versions. So I can do certain things here in Prompter. So for example, I can say do not include. So do not include people in my picture, for example. I might say stylize, and stylize, if you want to go to the Midjourney Gitbook, you can see what stylize will do. Basically, you are telling it how painterly you might want it to be. You know, it might look more like a Van Gogh or something very more abstract or just different than what you might have pictured. Or you might want it to be very photo quality. And these are specific number parameters. I often don't use chaos, but you can absolutely explore chaos. So if you add more chaos to it, it is going to be more abstract. So if I go closer to 100, that is going to be more abstract. And if I go very high on my style, let's say 800, again, I'm going to get something pretty stylized versus something very sort of human. And then there are those other parameters, and I'm hoping you're seeing all of this. So we have aspect ratio, medium, camera, lighting, color, all of these. And so for those of you who are trying to get to this, let me make sure I've got that URL properly for you. And I'm also going to go ahead and share this into the Reality Craft group at the end. But prompter guide, let me go ahead and just make you a banner for this. Prompter guide, made by Shane, is both an open source tool, but it is one that you can donate for. I personally did because I found it useful along the way. So I just wanted you to see what we're using here and how it works. And again, this is it's basically open source macros that you can modify for what you need in order to keep track of your prompt craft. So Prompterguide.com from Shane. I would encourage you, if you are going to go ahead and use it long term, to donate to him and keep him going. So you can see some of the choices I can make here. Some of them are going to be more sort of detailed, right? So I've been working in Art Nouveau style, so I'm going to go ahead and keep Art Nouveau style. I don't typically use the names of specific people in my prompts, and this is something that you may or may not want to engage, but I don't like it to look like a specific other copyrighted work, whether that's from a human or from another film. I'm just not into that. But other people really like that. So you do have those options here. You can certainly, pull from a film or a game or something. Or I can say fantastic realism or speculative fiction, or things that work for me. Surreal, synthwave, solar punk is already going to be sort of in this vibe anyway. But sci-fi, rainbow core. I like the rainbow core. I'm going to go for that one, right? And you can see at the bottom, my prompter output is making that prompt for me, and I can just copy and paste that. And I can also save it, right? So when I've got something I like, ooh, I got a question to save a script and to let it run. So these are things that you might want to enable or not. Again, these are, but I wanted you to just at least be able to see that there are some tools out there for you that are open source, even if you may or may not want to use them. So it's afraid of the macros. I want it to go to enable these macros anyway. So we're just going to go ahead and use them. But in some cases, you may need to allow for that to happen in your browser. So, all right. So I have saved my prompt. But what I really want is to then copy that and take it over to my Discord window and see if I get what I want. So when you're thinking about how to use these tools specifically, Prompter Guide is one of many. The full URL I'm going to go ahead and put, you can see at the bottom, prompterguide.com visual notebook. There is a really detailed guide there, including a whole course that you can go through on how to use advanced parameters. And I would encourage you to go ahead and do that if some of these ideas are interesting to you. And a reminder that you might need to go into your settings to use some of these things. So this is sort of where Midjourney gets to becoming an advanced toolkit for artists who are really seeking to do quite a bit more. It's not a basic thing. And writing the prompt is the beginning of an iterative process. So if you're thinking about Promptcraft as sort of, you write and you're done, it's not really like that. Often when you're building a body of work or a collection or a concept for a client, you might be doing 500 generations to go from an idea to something that really works. And that takes a fair amount of exploring and experimentation. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to get to something you can use, whether that's printable or for concept design or, some of those advanced, or at least leaving you on the doorstep of advanced topics. So I know many of you come from creative media, whether you are, existing artists or designers or directors. Each of these things are ways you can work with your existing art as well. So this part is really important. Image prompting is vital if you are trying to do something that builds on your existing body of work. Basically, what you're going to be doing is grabbing the URL of the images you want. And there are ways to feed it to Midjourney if those don't exist on the web currently. But I will give you sort of the baseline. Sorry, I have to keep myself hydrated here. So we're going to do this for just a few more minutes, and then we're going to dive into sort of comparative and questions. So if you have questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat, and we will bring them up in just a few minutes. Image prompting is, again, something you can do from your existing works. You can also use it to do, this kinds of Lensa style portraits that folks have been doing. I personally don't use the apps on my phone like Lensa. I will absolutely use, what's already built into my existing tools, whether it's Midjourney or to Canva. So this was sort of a Star Trekian portrait of me based on a photo of a headshot, right? So in this case, the prompt looks like imagine prompt, and then you take that URL. So that URL, in this case, you take it with the JPEG or the PNG at the end. It's going to want one of those two formats. And then you can put the rest of your prompt. Now, I would give you you don't want to necessarily give it a very long prompt. Midjourney, as a practice, can take prompts of maybe 50 words, but it's giving the most weight to the first few words. Even if you don't put weights and measures or numbers in there, it is automatically going to weight the first few words the most. So I want you to think about in your Promptcraft, starting your phrase with the most important things. And that can include what type of composition, what type of world, describe the world, in this case, Star Trek, or, put me in outer space, whatever it looks like, right? Don't overcomplicate it, especially when working with image prompts. It's too much information. You're not going to get what you want. So this was from an experiment that I did recently around a public art project where a memorial was being built for a young man who passed away as a Vietnam veteran. So in this case, if you're trying to do something of this type, I want you to use the image URL. If you do not have that image in, I'm going to go ahead and bring my Discord window back up and show you how this works. What you're going to be doing is, if you are in V3, you can add image weights. If you are not, go ahead and skip that for now. But there are ways in which you can weight the different images. And in Midjourney, you can use up to 5 images. So you can do fusions of yourself with other worlds. You can do fusions of your previous works. So that can be an interesting way to iterate on things you've already done. So again, just a reminder that V3 of Midjourney is going to let you do some of the things that you may not be able to do currently. You may find that you are getting a weird error message. And in that case, you can use that settings key. And that's going to give you capacity to bring it back. All right. So I'm going to bring it back in terms of the Discord window. All right. Bring it back, Discord. All right. So very quickly on the image prompt. Let's say I want to use a previous image as an image prompt. Every image has a URL associated, and I can copy the image link. So once an image has been seen on the web by Midjourney, it can be used in a future prompt. That's one way to get around this. Now, the other way, if you do have the image, is you can just click this plus button at the bottom right by the window there to message the bot, and you can upload an image, and then you can just copy the image link there. So those are 2 different ways to very quickly get an image into Midjourney so you can use it. Now I will just type imagine. Imagine prompt comes up. Now I'm going to type, in this case, I'm just going to copy that poster image. And then I'm going to say, woodcut Japanese And no, I'm just going to leave it like that. Woodcut Japanese. Let's see what comes. So it's going to take that image we had before, which was a pretty interesting, vibrant concept, but it's going to take it in a different style this time. And again, you could take 5 images at once and do the exact same thing. So let's see. I realize you are not getting the full window there. I'm so sorry, y'all. That was my bad. I will go ahead. Thank you. I will walk through that one more time. And apologies. So the plus sign is right by the command. So when I take a picture here, I click on it. And if I left click, I get to copy image link. And we're starting to see what those woodcuts came up as. But anytime I want to add a picture, I just go here, plus, upload file, and then I just tell it which image I want. And I give it to it. So now I'm going to bring my solar punk tower in. And I could take any of these concepts. Let's say I really like one of the 4 that came up, and I could remix it even with that new image I've given it. So this new image right here, if I click on it, I have the ability to copy image link with a right click. Now, let's say I want to try and remix that with one of these new concepts. I'm going to say maybe V3. And I'm going to put that other image in here. So now it's taking 2 images and making me versions of that. And let's see if that worked. Now, it might not work. Oh, it is. It's waiting to start. So this is one of my very first Midjourney images from back in V2. You can see how rough V2 looked versus V4. But it's an idea I liked. And V2 does have to have at least 2 images. Yes. So each of these have their own sort of quirky things. So you're going to find that, and thank you for letting me know, by the way, about that screen sharing gaff. We have a lot of single sharing here that's happening today. So within the Midjourney bot, you have a fair amount of control. I have found that this is the easiest way to do some of the refining. Again, it's just to either put it in your own server in a place where you can work quietly, or within a DM. I'm working in a DM because it has been the easiest way to kind of get it done today. So here's where it took that tower and tried to bring that tower into the concept. And I think it only really worked in maybe one version, but I kind of don't love it, right? So that's where the reroll, right? That like, let's try again. Like, give me 4 new variations. That might be the right way to go on some of these. And experimentation or weights and measures, maybe changing the order of things. All of that can play a role. But I want you to feel like all of these things are sort of limber for you as you are thinking of yourself as more of a poet of prompt. Promptcraft is a form of like jazz. People riff off each other all the time, especially in the public channels. You're going to find a lot of people riffing on each other's prompts. And so I want you to see what some prompts look like and how they evolve. So I'm going to go into my own Midjourney account in a little bit so that you can see some of those. I do like some of these remixed ones a little better, you know? So maybe I want to see U4 and U2. And I have no idea if my client is going to like any of these concepts compared to the feedback that we got yesterday on the other concept. So frequently when I'm building something like this, right, a concept for a conference with poster art and things like that, we'll do a shared place like a Google Photos Drive, something like that. We'll stick all the photos in it. And then we go through and say, okay, give me your top 3, give me your top 5. And then I'll take those images and run them a few more times and see where that takes us. Because often there's something in the synthesis that we hadn't thought of in the first generations. This is why it's really beneficial to work in larger collections and to think about your prompt craft as sort of an iterative process that necessarily changes because of the feedback. And whether that's feedback between you and someone else or just with you, doesn't matter. That level of iteration helps you improve. It's like music practice. Over time, you get better, your jazz flows, you can improv more. So those are the baselines, and that's going to give you a little bit of sort of rundown on how to play with those ideas. Now, unfortunately, I'm in relaxed mode, so you can see it's taking a little bit of time. And usually a generation in Midjourney takes about 50 seconds. In relaxed mode, it might take a little bit longer, a little more than a minute. And you can run a bunch of them at the same time, I think up to 5 or 6 before it starts to give you error messages. So it is able to do a pretty wide variety of things. However, you may find that you really need to play with it to get what you're looking for. For example, image weights. Those are things that are really going to help the more you experiment. If you are finding you're not getting what you're looking for example, photorealism, try the test P version, specifically test photo version, right? So if you're trying to get to photorealism, you're going to need to use words related to photography, or photorealism. Use those words in your prompts, right? The same way you would use a style descriptive word, let's say Art Deco or a period of time, in order to create a world or a mood, you can also do this. And it's really, really important to do that in order to get something that looks more like a designer's work. If you're trying to get to something that is going to work for a presentation or something, again, you're really trying to figure out how to nail all of those pieces. So, and we're going to discuss a little bit about that specific prompt we just looked at, right? So as I was iterating, you can see some of the words that I ended up adding. Now, the client originally gave me 10 words. I was like, can you tell me the 10 words you would want this poster to evoke or describe, right? So hope, radical optimism, futurism, nature, balance, community, nurturing, all of those were those descriptive words of a solar punk future that felt participatory and meaningful. So I had to take all of those descriptive words, right? Those are sort of in the bottom half, unfortunately, because what has to be at the top is that I want it to be a poster that has photorealism, right? I want it to depict futures. And in this case, it had to be a solar punk portal. And the first 12 versions I did of this one, I will say the portal portion was great, but it lacked people. And lacking people felt incomplete for the type of conference that this is creating, which is very participatory and inclusive. So I added people, and I specifically, because the woman who organizes this is a Black woman, I was like, can we add Black people in front, right? What does that future look like? Show me that future. Using words of ethnic origin or country of origin can help in getting better realism of humans. This is across the board, around the world. Also using words that are distinct to that language. So if you are trying to get beautiful women from a different country, use the word for beautiful in that language. You do not have to use English. However, it might not know it. However, yes, your mileage will vary. So if you are trying to get certain types of people to be expressed, you may find you need to be highly descriptive in ways you didn't expect to be descriptive. And that might include things about realistic anatomy or diversity. And those are challenging to get. Some of the prompts I've done, for example, recently were to show a catwalk with a human model and a cat. And it was very challenging to not get a woman dressed as a cat, right? To do two separate entities uh, can be sometimes challenging. That's where we use commas. And you'll notice here that I've broken up even the phrases into commas because I want them to be separate things in the algorithm's mind. In order to do that, I have to give them the breaks, right? So a pause, the way I'm speaking right now, I will give a natural pause. Those commas create a pause for the algorithm to say, okay, that's a new thing. So use your commas, especially in Midjourney. It is also useful in things like ChatGPT for forming a prompt. So this is healthy and good prompt craft across the board. So we're going to do a little bit of participatory process fairly soon. And I want to encourage those of you, if you are in the green room, you can reach out to me. If not, we are welcome. I'm going to give you the URL in just a moment. But first off, I want to tell you just a very quick thing about what's on the bottom of this, which is the job ID and the seed. Every image in Midjourney has a job ID, that's specific identifier, and it has a seed number. That seed number can be used to create more generations based specifically on that seed. So if you're a storyteller, you're trying to create a world that is cohesive, you need those seeds, and you need to keep track of your seeds so that you can build cohesion over time. This is how you get to character design and world design. This is where those advanced topics start to pile in. So the way to get to your seed is when you're in Midjourney, you need to send the envelope emoji as a reaction. If you've never used Discord to send reactions, it's at the top of each message comment. You can basically respond with an emoji. And when you respond or react with an emoji envelope, this is what comes back, the job ID and the seed. And that's really important because over time, let's say you're trying to create a book, you're going to maybe build thousands of images in order to build that world or that, body of work. Cohesiveness is really vital in order to get there. It is not easy to get cohesiveness in Midjourney without it. And other tools can do a little bit easier. Stable Diffusion, especially if you're training your own models, can absolutely do this quite a bit easier. But I just wanted to be honest with you about sort of how to get there, because I know some of you are creating bodies of work where you're trying to get to better cohesion, or you might want to be taking these things out into other tools in order to do that. So some of these are more sort of advanced topics. And yeah, I will absolutely show you. So let me go ahead and bring Discord back really quick for you. And just one second. So with any image that I like, let's say I'm into this one. At the top, when I sort of roll over it, I have add a reaction, reply, and more. Just add a reaction. And then the envelope is going to be one of my most used, probably. Yeah, right here. And when I do that, the bot automatically sends me back a message. So that's the baseline. I don't know why I think the streaming is acting a little funny on this, but yeah, you can see it just came back with the job ID and the seed there. I'm sorry, I need to, the screen sharing keeps jumping out and I'm not sure why. So let's do that one more time for you. And I'm so sorry, y'all. So when I go up here to any image I like, I have add reaction and then envelope. So add reaction and reply. are just common Discord options there. But what it gives me back is the job ID and the seed. Now you can also get this at midjourney.com. There are other methods, but this is how you do it direct in Discord. So we're going to go through a little bit of the midjourney.com experience as well. And I see that we have a few folks in the green room. So let's go ahead and remove this. And I apologize. I know I'm super sniffly now. My allergies are really getting to me. I apologize, y'all. So just to summarize some of what we just looked at and a few other URLs, again, we're going to have these slides sent to you, and also they will be in the Reality Craft group. This is a deck that we are constantly adding to. So if you are finding great resources, I do try to add things to it fairly recently, at least every 2 weeks. So Prompt Locker, if you're trying to do more sort of detailed but private Promptcraft, and in sense of like you need to track hundreds of prompts. What we looked at today in terms of the prompter guide, and that one, I apologize, I realize it's not on this one right now. So let's give you that one as well. Prompter guide, which we looked at from Shane. That one is able to do quite a bit open source and free and on your own. But if you find that you're kind of at your limit, you can use a tool called Prompt Locker. Some of these docs, again, these are docs that we will go ahead and share to the Reality Craft group, are specific around style types, or styles that might be connected to specific types of art movements, right? So if you're trying to find specific words for the art movement that you're trying to describe and you don't know what it's called, these are documents for you. Again, I don't prompt from specific artist names. I know other folks do and teach that. I choose not to. So that's going to be yours. So, all right. It sounds like we were not able to get that Discord piece showing properly. And so I'm going to walk you through that a little bit later. If you got stuck on one piece of the Discord experience, whether it's, you know, how to get to your seed and how to send that emoji back to the bot, or to, you know, add it to your server, things like that, we can absolutely follow up as well. So, but I do want to share with you the Midjourney. There are so many windows to share with you for this workshop is one of the challenges. There are a handful of other tools that I think are going to be useful to us when we're talking about Promptcraft from a broader frame. So one of them I do want to talk to you about a little bit is specifically Prompt Hero and Stable Diffusion. So at the beginning, I gave us a URL to use. Let's go ahead and put this. So this is Prompt Hero. And we're going to look a little bit at Prompt Hero because I want you to be thinking about how to test those different tools. And so if you've never used Stable Diffusion before, I'm going to put Dream Studio. We have a handful of tools that we've used pretty frequently. Dream Studio is one that you'll have a handful of free generations within. We also sometimes will use the 3D world called Simulacra. We did that in a previous workshop. Unfortunately, it takes a little bit of time, so we're not going to do that today. But this is another one that you can take any of these prompts into if you want to go ahead and try these on your own. What Prompt Hero does is helps us keep track of what some of the best prompts are and maybe get you some words and concepts that you can use. So we're going to be looking at some of the best of Stable Diffusion, and you can see here that it has something called Edit in Prompt Studio. So Prompt Studio as a tool is a tool for, similarly to what we looked at in that Google Doc, it can help you improve your prompt craft. and you can do certain things to modify. So let's say you have your stable diffusion image, but you want to try and modify it. Now, this is giving you width. So that's your aspect ratios here, your width and height, guidance scale, steps. Steps is number of steps in the generation. And every tool has an opportunity to change this. Steps, generally more steps is taking a little bit longer time and a little bit more refinement in the diffusion. So that will sometimes cost more as well, depending on how it's being dealt with. So I don't have a seed here. I could put one in, but it doesn't really matter here. This is asking if I have a seed. And this is also asking me if I have a model in mind, right? So I can use Stable Diffusion, different versions. I can also use OpenJourney as well, right? So there's a couple of these other, Arcane Diffusion, Redshift, Stable Diffusion 2. But I can take any image in this case from someone else's work and really work with it. So maybe I definitely don't want this art station. And I don't want it to be an illustration. I want it to be more like a photo. And I'll generate image from there. And you can see here, Prompt Hero, one of many. It's going to let you create a message. But it's going to want you to do that very quickly. Each of these web tools will generally give you about 25 generations before you have to pay for something. So that's where you're going to get a little bit done and then not as much as you might want. So I just want to be super clear with you. Prompt Hero lets you search across different models for some of the best and highly rated images from communities. So this is, again, just one of those tools that might be useful to you. Non-essential, but I do want to give us some time to answer some questions and really talk to each other as well. So I'm going to say, if those of you who are in the green room, I see that there's 2 of you in here. If you want to say hi, just shake your hand and I'll add you to the show. And you can also screen share if you choose. So we can have a little bit of a conversation about what you're working on and workshop it, or we can, talk via the private chat, but you are also welcome to screen share. So we're going to talk through a little bit of sort of example Promptcraft and some things that you might want to try at home in order to get better results. These are from Olivier Sarkis. He's one of the sort of main YouTubers out there who's teaching. I have found his videos extremely useful, along with Aerotem Art, who is a gentleman in the UK who is building a tool called The Loom. If you're trying to do more sort of graphic novels, he's got a Kickstarter out right now. So these are both gentlemen from Europe who are sort of teaching, again, advanced style craft. So if you're trying to pull from, in this case, isometric illustration, you can do hundreds of these isometric illustrations of house from the 1929 year. The reason it is framed that way, house from the 1929 year, is because you want it to focus on the house first, and you want it to understand that 1929 is important, but that 1929 is a year. So I wanted you to understand how you might need to reframe things, take out any extraneous words, or change words in order. It might not sound like what we would say to each other, and it probably won't, right? Prompts are again, more like beat poetry or jazz. They just have a different language set, a different grammar to them. So young, handsome man, typography art. These are really good samples of things that you might want to try to do. So you might want to give this a sample at home. Again, the 5 types of things that go into that prompt at the beginning. A content type. Is it a photograph, a poster, an illustration, a 3D game gem, right? There are infinite types of content. While you are always going to get a 2D image out of Stable Diffusion or Midjourney or Dolly, for example, they can try to render 2.5 or 3D. It's just not going to be a 3D image. And I want to be really clear with you on that as well. But content type, description, that is really that cluster of words that describes and imagines the scene for it. Style, and style can be an art style, it can be an illustration style, it can be a graphic design term. Composition, frequently these are terms from photography as well as stage or graphic design or any type of art. And then parameters. And those parameters we discussed earlier usually have 2 dashes before them. That is specific to Midjourney. That is not the case in Stable Diffusion. All right. Do any of our backend folks want to share their screen? Because if you do, let me know and we'll go ahead and do that. Otherwise, I'm going to bring you through in my Midjourney. And we're going to look at, we're not going to look at ChatGPT today, unfortunately, in detail because it is not working for many of us. So ChatGPT has been so inundated over the past 2 weeks that frequently, it's being used by people who are doing all sorts of things. I don't use it for my own books, but other people do. And you can absolutely be in there writing and publishing. I would encourage you to get into ChatGPT and at least experiment with it a little bit. It can do fiction and nonfiction and other types of media as well. All right, this is a really good question. I'm going to go ahead and put it in our screen, and then we'll dive into Midjourney. So, and I unfortunately, let's see, I don't think I can bring it in, so I'm going to have to copy and banner it over, but maybe I can. Let's see. Yes, and ChatGPT can also write code. I've been working on a code experiment lately, and it can write, for example, taking open source code and then spinning off new open source code. So this is something that, using other GitHub code out there, I've been able to build new tools. And so we'll be able to talk a little bit about that as well. So there's a question. Are all the types of parameters mixed together in a prompt? And thank you, Liz, for this question. Are all the types of parameters mixed together in a prompt? Is there an order? So there is not an order in the sense that parameters always go at the end. You do not want them in the middle because it gets a little confusing. And generally, once parameters come up in the sense of those 2 hyphens and various parameters, it's not looking for other descriptors. It's only looking to negate or refine. So that information is at the end of the prompt, but it doesn't matter if it's aspect ratio or, negation or any of the other parameters that you might be using, chaos, all of those things. They all show up at the end. Image weights and measures are handled slightly differently. And honestly, I'm expecting Midjourney to refine how they do that in the next few weeks. So I'll update you on the group as that happens. I would suspect that my last conversation with the folks at Midjourney, I went to their live meetup and they said that there would be some updates happening to the image specifically to improve image generation late in February. So hopefully that's coming soon. I want to get you over to the Midjourney window though. And then if anyone else has, great question, by the way, if anyone else has a question that they want me to go ahead and pull in, now is a great time to do that. All right, so I'm going to pull up the Midjourney window. As you can all tell, I've got too many windows open. That's the one I'm looking for. Now let's see if I can stop screen and start it. Okay, so for those of you who are new to Midjourney, when you are in Midjourney, you get a whole website with it to organize from. And this website includes archives of everything you've worked on. And it also has the community showcases. So let me make sure you're seeing my screen. You are not yet. All right, there we go. Perfect. So this is, again, midjourney.com. So just double check in there and log in, and you should be able to see your work at midjourney.com. We're going to go through really quick because I want to show you some of the things you can do with your work here. So each of these images, these are for an architectural project in the metaverse, looking for an XR space. And so each of these spaces, I'm going to make sure you can see. So each time I scroll over, you should be able to see. Let's make sure you can see that. There's an overlay that shows me the tag. Now it also has three little dots at the bottom that will open options. To open options, you click on that and it lets you copy, open in, save image, report, right? So this is where I can even copy someone else's prompt, full command, or job ID. And this is really interesting. I can also open that exact same image in a new tab and see all the detail about it. So there's a couple of different ways in which that can be useful. But now I have that single image. So I am currently paying for Midjourney. You are limited. I'm not sure. I think it was 25 images last I checked when you're in Midjourney before you have to pay for it. Some folks do get around that, but I have found that it's pretty tricky to get around that because of the way Discord works. So again, you can try and use those other tools. For example, OpenJourney is built into some of the web tools. So if you get to the limit of what you can do for free and you want to go explore what a similar generator can do, but on the web, OpenJourney is very similar. Not the same, but very similar. Sort of a cross between Stable Diffusion and Midjourney. For those of you who are relatively new to this field, both Stable Diffusion and Midjourney are built on similar data training sets. And there's a fair amount of news about that. Obviously, artists in some cases are quite upset about how those training sets were obtained and used and are suing for the right to be not included. Stable Diffusion has said in their next version they will already allow for opt-out. And eventually there will possibly be models for opt-in, right? So that artists would be able to include their model and receive some benefit for that. So I would hope that those kinds of revisions are on the horizon, but we're not there yet. So I just want to be super honest with you that if you're an artist and you're trying to figure out sort of where the future is going, there's a couple of different versions, both opt-out and opt-in, that might include creators in the value proposition or attractive. But certainly the ways in which much of the work behind these models was created included using every type of image on the web that, you know, there's a wide variety of stuff out there in different data sets. So we do talk about how to create your own data sets and your own training models in the advanced class. So if these are topics that are pretty interesting to you and you want to explore, for example, how to take 500 images and build your own training model for your own book or world or your own projects, we do explore that in the next workshop that's happening Tuesday evening. So those of you who are here, you're already welcome to come to that and encouraged to send in your questions if you have specific things you're aiming for. So, all right, I am going to show you just a little bit more of what you can do inside the Midjourney window. We are not going to do too much in Stable Diffusion today directly. I am going to encourage you to go to a handful of those websites where you can use Stable Diffusion directly on the web on your own time. I have found personally, Stable Diffusion is fairly good at artistic rendering of some types of concepts. It is not as good at photorealism unless you are using a model designed for photorealism. And there are some questions and concerns, right? Some of the best models on photorealism, uh, automatic 1111 is one of them, may or may not be the most ethically sourced tools. And so you are going to need to think about whether it is more important for you to have uh, realistic bodies that look like models or rock stars, or you want to have more painterly bodies. Those are decisions that can lead you down a different path or a different toolkit, or can lead you to a different training model altogether. So I just want to be really honest with you about what that can potentially look like. So I am not signed in on this one right now. And usually when you're signed in on Midjourney, you can see your collections and all of those sorts of things. Creating collections is one other way that you can organize your content inside Midjourney to be able to find it later, or to especially build body of work. So I have collections related to architecture, to characters. I sometimes will come back to a theme 3 or 6 months later to try it again and redevelop it. So those are all useful ways in which you might want to build from that work. So what we do here, obviously, is a mix of creative design work and the kinds of work that you're doing here. If you need support in trying to figure out how this is going to be built into your workflow, I'm going to say, number one, if you want to come to next Tuesday's workshop, that's great. Or number two, if you and your team want to come, we can schedule either live or remote sessions. We are currently building a 3D space for that, but obviously there are 2D spaces and virtual spaces for that as well. My design lab here in Oakland, we can support about 18 folks working creatively together. So if that is a service you need, please reach out. We can do concept design, strategy guides, workshops, and a pretty wide variety of things internally with your companies or with your teams. That includes theatrical teams. So I sometimes meet with film, television, theater, and conferences as well, early stage concept on conferences, and as well as product design, right? So these are different types of generative creative ideas. And this is an idea that I started in Midjourney, and I want to show you a little bit of what you can do with these things, right? So I took these ideas and then I kept iterating and kept iterating, and then I started making them into what we would call like a light field experiment. Or a short 3D video that felt more three-dimensional. These were using tools from websites such as Leia and Luma, which are companies in the sort of 3D design and interface space. So by taking some of your work out of here, you can make animations, you can make a wide variety of other types of concept creative work, and then use that in order to then get to the next step in your development. We will talk a little bit more about advanced topics and workflows from here, but I just wanted to give you some sense of what that can look like. Generally, again, you're only going to get to about 2,000 pixels out of here. So taking your tools out to an upscaler, if you suspect you're going to be doing a lot of upscaling, I would recommend Topaz. It's $99. Otherwise, if you only need to do a few items occasionally, there are lots of free upscalers out there. So Googling upscalers is a good way to start. I do have one friend who specializes in how to print for generative media, and I will absolutely recommend Liz Howard's. I'm sorry, I have to get her URL for you. So I will share that directly to the group because I realized it is not in our deck today. But if you're trying to print things specifically, once you go to upscaling and paint it off, you should be able to then get that to any number of sites. I currently use sites like Redbubble. You can use your Couture sites as well, or just print things off to pretty wide variety of use cases. Please, 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 I want you to feel free to reach out to me if you need anything. And we have a few minutes for questions. So I'm just going to go ahead and bring our Discord window back in the stream. And if any of you have specific questions that you want us to tackle, now is a great time to send those along. And I want to thank you all for joining me today because this has been a lot of fun. I can see that we've had a few questions come in, and I can see that some of you have been coming from all over the world. So I know we have some folks up after midnight today, so thank you for staying up late with us. And I want you to feel very comfortable to check this out asynchronously as well. This is being recorded. You are welcome to share this with your colleagues. And if you found value, but you didn't register for this workshop, you are welcome to send in a donation at evo.ist. All right. So it sounds like we've had some challenges with the photo prompting, and I want to get that really nailed with you one more time. So let's make that happen while we have each other here. I'm going to go ahead and bring back our V4 Discord window. Just one moment. It doesn't like it when I try to share two many screens at once, I'm noticing. All right, Discord. Okay. So when you are in Midjourney, in Discord, you have basically the goal is to give within the Imagine prompt the URL. If you do not have a URL to start, you just have an image and it's already on your hard drive, you're going to start with the plus sign. And I'm going to go ahead and add stream right now. All right. And at the bottom, you see a plus sign right near that message Midjourney bot. And that's what I'm going to use here. And when I click on this plus sign, it should say upload a file. You can also double click. And now I just need to give it an image. I could give it a map of anything. I can try one of my previous works. All right. So now that image has been given to Midjourney. If I go over it and I right click on it, and I'm not 100% sure this is on the Mac, so whatever right click is for you, you should be able to right click on an image. I'm sorry, and you do need to pop it up. So if the order isn't working, left click on the image first and then right click. And that might be tricky for you. Bring up the image first. It's going to just become large, and then right click, and you can copy image link. Copy image link. And then I'm going to come down here and start my Imagine prompt the same way I would for any other generation. And I'm going to put that URL in there. And now I'm going to tell it VR stained glass window in museum. I have no idea what it's going to do with that, but at least it might refine that image closer to the concept that I'm going for. In this case, a stained glass window of something that looks like the VR experience. So I hope that answers your question. I know that takes just a little bit of time, but you can add, again, up to 5 images, and you don't have to use what we would call carrots or whatever the parentheses that look like V's on their side. But you can use those if it helps you to separate the URLs. So to form that, I'm going to put that in a banner so you can see exactly what that would look like. Is you're going to do Imagine prompt and then the image URL.jpg, and then you will type whatever that prompt is. So that looks like this. Okay. And you can see Midjourney spit that back to me. It gave me its version of the URL shortened with the words, right? And then it also put the Q2 V4. Q2 in this case is quality 2. I asked it for a relatively high quality. That's in my settings. And I'm in version 4 of Midjourney. So that's what the Q2 V4 mean again at the end. How did I get V4 to only use one image? I've actually never had a problem with only using one image. And so that's an interesting question. But so the question here, how do you get V4 to only use one image? And this is something that honestly, I've never had a problem with V4 only using one image. So, however, you do need to give it text. And if you're not giving it text, it will probably spit back an error message. So I think we got to most of the questions. Were there any other questions that we did not hit today? Because we're just about to wrap. All right. And I'm just going to give you those URLs if you're trying to get into these one more time. Beta.dreamstudio.ai is a great place to start, and especially if you were watching this and you did not get in midjourney.com, that will get you to Midjourney V4, which is what we were just looking at today. All right, and I think we're all set. So I am going to eventually bring myself back into this window. Say hi to you. Hi, everybody. It's been great to see you today, and thank you for joining me for this version of the Reality Craft Workshop. I am going to sign off just a moment, but thanks to all of you who've been joining us here. And if you have any other questions, we have a Reality Craft group. It is on Facebook. I would encourage you to reach out if you would like to join. I unfortunately, it looks like, did not put that URL on a banner for us, but I will make sure it is sent to you. You should already have it in your email if you have signed up for today's workshop. So join us in the Reality Craft group if you need any support. And thanks for joining us today. And I hope you're doing well. Take care and have a wonderful day wherever you are. It's been really good to see you, and good luck. Good luck. Tell us how it goes. Send us your iterations, and keep us up to date on how you're doing. Have a great day.